And now it's time for a preview of an upcoming game by Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're going to be taking a look at a prototype for a game that's currently on Kickstarter called Secrets of the Lost Tomb. To understand Secrets of the Lost Tomb, you simply have to go and watch some Pulp Fiction. Think of The Mummy or Indiana Jones, things like that, because in this game, you're going to be working together as a group and going into a tomb, which is always a bad idea, but in the game, I guess it's good and exciting, and you're trying to do something to stop some ancient evil, to do something good. Let's take a look at how the game plays, and we'll be back. All my prototypes, the components you see here are not final. Some of the artwork and things might be close to final or done, but this is just a preview to show you how the game plays. Now what you're going to do in this game is you're going to be picking a scenario. So here the scenario is the Pharaoh with the blue eyes, Return of Raz Azul. And each of these scenarios has a normal side and then has a more difficult side. As the game progresses, when you look at these different sides, you'll see that there's a bunch of text here because there's a story to be read and there's an objective condition that you need to do here. Like you need to find a staff of Ra and you need to find a ruby scarab, etc. So when you do these, the fewer objectives, the easier the game will be. Each objective you'll be drawing from a deck where you have objectives that you'll draw. Like for example, destroy 2 elite monsters, search 3 rooms on level 2, destroy 5 monsters on level 3. There's also hard objectives, again, if you want to make the game more difficult, explore 3 rooms on level 1, 2 rooms on level 2, and 3 rooms on level 3. So you're going to set this up at the beginning of the game, and this is your goal to winning the game as a group. Each person's going to start with a character. This character has over here you keep track of your life. You have different stats. Your movement, which is obviously how far you can move. Your audacity. Audacity will give you audacity tokens. These tokens can be used to re-roll dice. Your strength, knowledge, dexterity, and faith. These are 4 different stats that you will use over the course of the game to make checks. There are dice included with the game, and when you make a check, let's say you need to make a knowledge check for Libby Villa, she'll roll 2 dice because her knowledge is 2, and try to get a 5 and a 6 on either one of those. So you can see that the higher the number is, the better your chance of you having of making a check. You also have a courage track over here. This courage track is going to start on a different spot, but as you gain or lose courage over the course of the game, that's going to affect how many dice you'll roll and test. So let's see, her courage gets up to 9. It will add 2 dice to checks that she makes. While if her courage is at -8, she'll lose checks. And if your courage is at -10, then you just start running like a mad person to the door. So there's different characters involved in the game, and they all have different stats, and they all have special abilities. They have one special ability that they can use consistently, another special ability that's used once per game. Each character also, on the flip side, has basically a personal mission, something that they're trying to do by themselves. Like this guy here, he needs to defeat 4 monsters hand-to-hand, or melee weapons, and search 4 rooms. And when he does that, he'll get an extra action and +1 strength and +2 dexterity. So this is something that will help the group out as a whole, but you're personally trying to do something. There's also a background story and things like that. So these are the different characters that are in the game. Each character will also start with some equipment. Now, equipment is something that you can find during the course of the game, but also some people start with it. Many of the equipment is different weapons that will give you bonuses to combat checks. Combat checks will usually use strength or some sort of combat, maybe dexterity. Like, for example, this gun uses a dexterity check and adds 4 dice to that check. They have special abilities. Some of the cards that you have, you can see this one has 2-1, so that it's used after a certain number of times. Like this flamethrower can be, you'll just be turning it to show how many times that you've used it. Some of them you can discard them to use. There's a holy symbol. And other of them have upkeep costs. During the upkeep phase, sometimes they'll run out of ammunition. Or this one, you roll a die, and if you do, you discard. So there's different sorts of upkeeps. There's not just weapons though in here. We have armor. Here's a helmet, and then of course a fedora that gives special abilities. There's other equipment like a rope, which lets you go to different levels, or holy water, or rum, which can be used a few times to help keep your courage up, and bandages to heal people. So there's all sorts of different things that you'll come across over the course of the game. This is the way that the dungeon is going to be set up at the beginning of the game. You have 3 different floors. There's 3 tiles for the top floor, 1 for the second floor, and 1 for the bottom floor. Now, if you move your piece, and you'll have your pieces that you'll be moving, if you move your piece here, you can move from here to this floor, first floor to second floor. There's stairs here. There's no way to get down to the 3rd floor from the 2nd floor. You just have to find a spot to get there or use a card like rope, etc. When you are taking your turns, you're going to be exploring these rooms out here. And when you do that, you'll be drawing from a pile of tiles. And each of these piles says level 1, 2, and 3, or maybe it will just say level 2 on it. So let's say I'm in level 1 and I go to a new room. I'll look at the top tile of the pile and say 1, 2, or 3. Fine, I can go on this one. Level 2, sorry, that one can only be placed if I'm exploring down here in level 2. And as you find these rooms, you're going to be placing them on the board and adding them, and then each tile that you go into will have different things happen when you go into it. All you have to do is make sure the doors match up as you go into them. When you go into a room, there will either sometimes be a compass, which shows that you have an adventure in that room, or a skull and crossbones, which means you have a misadventure. When you do that, you're going to draw from the top of this pile here. Now, this pile doesn't have a card backing. Instead, there's 2 sides to it. And you can see there's a lot of text. That's because there's a lot of story on each one. The story's somewhat the same, but either when you're going to have to make a test with using one of your skills and pass this test, and then what happens to you depends on whether you have a misadventure, in which case you'd go to the red side, which is usually something bad, or at least if you pass it, you just kind of avoid something bad. And then the good side, where something good can happen to you, because some rooms are more dangerous than other rooms. And so these cards are of all different things, and they have a lot of text on them to add to the story to the game. For example, is that bread baking? It sure smells like it. You gaze all around the room looking for the source. You eventually realize that the smell is actually, well, you find out during the story. Players are going to have actions on their turns as they go. One of their actions is going to be moving to the different rooms. They'll be able to use their move points as they go around. Another action that you have is that you can search a room. Now, when you search a room, the color of the background of the room is going to be important. So you can see here, this is a green room. This is a room that's ripe for searching. When you search, you'll draw a card and turn this card over. And this shows basically what's inside this room. So you can see here that if this was a green room and you turn this over, you would have got a treasure. If it had been a yellow room, you would have got a monster. If it had been a red room, you would have had to defeat a more difficult monster, but you would have got an artifact. So you can see the red rooms are very dangerous, but they can provide some very good rewards. After you're done searching a green room, for example, you would put a yellow token there to show that room's been searched. The next time you search it, you would have to search as if it was a yellow room, and then change it to red. And then the next time you search a red room, you turn it over to show that that room can't be searched any longer. And if the room already is a different color, let's say the room started off and it was red, you could only search it 1 time. Or if the room started off and it was yellow, you could search it only 2 times. Now there's all sorts of rooms in here. Here's the Terracotta Warriors, and here's the lake, and here's the Final Frontier with laser beams and things, and the crypt. And many of these rooms, when you go into them, something will happen, or monsters can't go into this room. This is the atrium of the Elder Sign. You're safe from monsters in here. Here's Mount Olympus. Here, when you move into it, you get +2 hit points, and you heal to full. That's a great room, the Fountain of Youth. Other rooms have a place in them that you can use in action, like this one lets you move to the 3rd level. That's how you get there from the mine shaft. And here you have an arc portal where you can move your character to any explored room in the tomb. So this is a way to get around. So these are some of the actions that players can take. Players can also take actions where they can trade with other people. They can try to calm down, where they'll roll a faith check and gain a courage for each success to increase their courage. They can bind wounds for themselves or other players if you've been wounded, or you can attack enemies. Now you're going to find monsters as the game progresses. Some monsters are going to come out each turn. Other monsters you'll find when you search a room. There's different kinds of monsters. There's regular monsters like this zombie conquistador, and this terracotta warrior, and this mummified jackal. And each of these monsters has a courage thing. These are elite monsters. This Guardian of the Deep and this Golem of Easter Island. And when you meet these people for the first time, you're going to lose as much courage as it shows in the top thing. So this Guardian Deep makes you lose 4, the Terracotta Warrior makes you lose 1. However, you will gain half the courage you lost back if you defeat them. And then they just have other stats. They have, you know, how much attack they'll do to you. When they attack you, they'll roll, and each success is going to hurt you. They have armor, which will subtract from when you attack them. And when you attack somebody, you're going to roll dice for a combat check. 5s will hit them, although you subtract the armor from the number of 5s you roll. 6s will hit them, ignoring armor. And then they have a certain number of hit points that you can try to evade them by escaping them. There's a number there. And then how far they move. So these monsters can actually be placed into stands. So there's stands for the monsters, and then when they show up, you're going to have to go around and take care of these monsters, especially since sometimes that's one of the objectives, is to kill different monsters. Also, they'll be coming after you. At the beginning of each turn, before players get their actions, players will turn over one of these cards here and do what it says. First of all, usually we'll move, all the monsters on the board are going to move and attack. Then it will spawn more monsters. This one here, for example, spawns a regular monster in level 1 and an elite monster in level 2. And then it gives you an effect, like no items can be drawn this round. And on the comet track, it moves 1. There's a comet track that's included with the game to keep track of turns. Players need to accomplish their mission within these number of turns to win the game. And so here the comet track would move 1. Sometimes the comet track won't move. Sometimes it will move more than 1. And then upkeep happens at the beginning of a turn, where players have cards that they have turned sideways and they can undo that, or some cards have upkeep costs, etc. Now, players are trying to accomplish their goal. If they don't, something bad will happen disastrously when the time runs out. In the instance of the scenario I've been showing you, that means Raz Azul will show up, and he's going to start fighting everybody and also trying to escape the tomb. If he escapes the tomb, then everybody loses. You can see he's very powerful here, and if he rolls different symbols, many of the monsters have these, but if he rolls certain symbols, you'll be cursed, or he'll mesmerize you, which makes you lose an action, and he's much more powerful. And so you want to try to accomplish it and get the artifacts you need. Speaking of artifacts, there's artifacts that you can hunt down specifically over the course scenario, and there's some that you might just find randomly. And artifacts are always really awesome things. They'll give you, this gives you immunity to losing actions and gives you extra actions, and this gives you extra stats. Artifacts are great, so hunting these down is often a very useful and good thing to do. And so that's what players are doing. Together as a group, they'll win if they accomplish the objectives of their scenario, and they'll lose if whatever bad happens in this instance. They'll lose if Raz Azul escapes into the world, bringing destruction upon everybody. What this game is about most strongly is the story involved. You have a scenario, and I have the one scenario I showed you, but it's going to come with multiple scenarios to pick from, and you can make the scenario as hard or easy as you want. There are monsters in the game, but the game is not necessarily about fighting monsters, although that's a big part of it. It's about accomplishing your goal, which might be exploring rooms or searching rooms. The searching room mechanism is something I've not seen in the game before, which is cool, because as you search the room, you're finding less and less stuff. And of course, you always got to be careful when searching, because stuff might pop up. The dungeon's going to be played out differently each time. When I say dungeon, I guess it's a tomb. I guess 6 of one, half dozen of another. And so players are going to be working together. Now, in the game itself, I didn't play with these rules, but I know there's a competitive play. But I think just from playing this here, that I think most people are going to prefer the cooperative way anyway, as you work together to fight some ancient evil. So the characters certainly have different feels with different special abilities. There's lots of cool weapons and artifacts that you can find. There's lots of evil, nasty monsters. But the biggest thing of all, like I said at the beginning, is just that the story is kind of laid on there. Every time you go in a room, some story event is probably going to happen, and you have to deal with that. The scenario itself, as you accomplish each objective, there's story to read there. And so this whole thing is, if you like theme in a game, this is one that you're going to like here. There's a lot of moving pieces, but the theme kind of just follows it along. Of course you'll go into this room. Of course you'll fight that monster, because that's what you would do thematically. Anyhow, Secrets of the Lost Tomb is currently on Kickstarter right now, so if you're interested in supporting it and playing this adventure into a tomb, I still don't know why people go down into these tombs, but if you're interested in that, I'll show you the link right now.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.
There.